think that the crypto space, digital currency, is still an evolving space. It's non-traditional. The market structure that supports it is new. It's very fragmented, and it's still in the process of rapid development. So if you think about ETFs, ETFs generally invested in asset classes traditionally that had already been mature. Now ETFs exist, and now you have a new asset class with a new infrastructure. So I think that there's some legitimate concerns on the behalf of the regulators. You know, it's not just the SEC, but it's also CFTC as well for futures regulation. And so I do think that an ETF will eventually be approved, whether it's a futures style product or a spot, a coin-based product. It won't be just Bitcoin. It'll probably be some other digital assets as well. So it'll eventually happen. But I think that the regulators are, they're right to be concerned. I think that from the most part, they do acknowledge that they're not experts in this space. They want to get to know the space better, see how it develops. I think that we saw also in the past, especially with the tech bubble that I mentioned during the speech, was that people were very quick to invest without really understanding the investment thesis, the value. And so I think that the regulators, seeing how quickly the price went up, how people were so easy to invest without understanding the environment, that I think that they want to make sure that they're very comfortable before they can permit this security. And so some of the challenges, let's say, in terms of the maturity of the market is around traditional asset classes are governed. They have market structure that's already been established. They also have, let's say, ways of custodying the assets, of safeguarding the investor assets that the ETF holds as well. So if you think about Bitcoin or Ether, it's a different environment. The way that these digital wallets, for example, will keep the assets. And so I think that as the industry evolves and people are smarter, if we think about some of the conversations today versus 2 or 3 years ago when the initial conversation started, which is, hey, Bitcoin is going to do well, let's launch an ETF. Now we're thinking about proper custody, proper insurance, the benefits maybe of diversification. We have, right now, Bitcoin, I think, is going through a period of lower volatility, more price stability as well. So I think all of those factors are going to come into place. And I know that we would like investability, but I think that it's good for the regulators to be smart about, about the right time and the right structure as well for investor protection. I do think that there are institutional and even retail investors that are interested in investing, and I think that certain platforms only dictate that you can invest in let's say, a certain type of security. So if, let's say, for example, Bitcoin were in the form of an ETF, now you would have to see that you don't have to necessarily have a digital account. Now you can actually own the ETF in a brokerage account, and then by owning it through a brokerage account, it creates access to Bitcoin that for certain investors and certain restrictions that are going to be addressed by having that. Now in terms of at this point, if you launch an ETF, how quickly investors will come in, I think that investors have gotten smarter today. If you look at new ETF issuance today, it's more difficult, let's say, to launch an ETF and then to have investors come in right away. I think that there's a higher understanding of fiduciary obligations, about let's say, due diligence to understand the ETF and what it invests in. I think the ETF community has done a lot of great work in educating investors about how to look at an ETF properly today versus 10 years ago. And so I think that that's going to help as well, and so that people just don't rush into the door. And then also I think that the recent price volatility, with the pricing going up and then falling down very quickly, I think that people have realized this is not an instrument, an asset that's just going to keep going up all the time, that there is some risk to the investment as well. And I think that people have seen the shock of the price going down as much as the shock of the price going up. And so hopefully there's more of a long-term mindset around how digital currencies and the ecosystem along with blockchain is let's say a viable longer-term solution. And even today, we're looking at people. We're talking to asset managers and to creators who are looking to create assets that are not just Bitcoin, but diversified as well. And so I think that's going to be good as well, because going back to my tech bubble comment, that many technology companies failed, but many who survived have done very, very, very well. And so is it possible, because this is a disruptive industry with potentially significant implications, does that mean that we could, that you want to be diversified because the risk is high, but by being diversified, hopefully you catch the investments that are successful? Sure. So, I mean, there are certain things that I, probably, couldn't say, just more like call it business, let's say, private business activities, as well as also, certain regulatory elements. But I would say that 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 I think all the exchanges, and I don't know exactly how, for example, our competitors are looking at this, but I can say that because of the opportunities and the conversation there, I'm sure that we're looking at it, other people are looking at it as well. But I do think that because it's a new environment, and you were saying about regulation, so it's not just about, let's say, following regulation, but it's also about applying existing regulation and then creating the right regulation as well that is suitable for, let's say, this type of asset class or this type of product as well. And so, I would say the best thing to say about this is that it is definitely an interest area, but we also are very mindful of our responsibilities as regulated entities to be thoughtful about this, to balance the business opportunity along with investor protection, and look for the right partners, the right product structures, and to be thoughtful and not try to rush into something. So in terms of the crypto market, I'd say that's still, it's still young, and I don't say I'm the expert in everything that's required to advance this market, but I still think that there needs to be more development and smarter regulation around the crypto space. And I'm not just talking about ETFs, I'm talking about the currencies as well. I think that smarter regulation for a new type of asset class, I think it's worth the effort. In terms of blockchain, I think that that's another different conversation, because you're basically talking about new platforms that, let's say, have functions. So in some cases, I'm sure that that there's let's say regulation is necessary, but then let's say certain other services as well may not necessarily be as necessary. So if you're thinking about, for example, let's say governance of settlements and payments, there's going to have to be elements of new regulation to help promote that or apply existing regulations. But then if there's other, let's say, services that, let's say, blockchain provides that's more efficient, well, if they don't have, let's say, the same consequences or risks, then really is regulation isn't necessary for other things. Because we have to remember that blockchain isn't just financial. So I come from a financial company where there are a lot of regulatory elements because of what I do, but then there's other industries as well, let's say, that are outside of my industry, where I don't think that over regulating would be the smartest thing to do. I mean, definitely, we are speaking about that topic and trying to weigh the business and the regulatory elements as well. Very hard to say, kind of how that plays out. Especially with the regulators being so concerned about this space and just wanting to make sure that they have a good handle on what happens. But I'd say that we're going to keep looking, like I said before, looking for the right opportunities. I do think that blockchain, because of the business ramifications around let's say efficiencies, market efficiencies, I do think that I can comfortably say that we're very bullish, we're very heavily involved. We're optimistic about the benefits of blockchain. So, I would say that, from the blockchain side of the conversation, we are working on a lot of different projects, as I've mentioned before in the speech, and we're continuously looking for new opportunities as well, because we are a fintech company. But on the digital assets, the digital currencies, including Bitcoin and other crypto coins as well, is that I think that there's definitely let's say some potential for opportunities, but at the same time as well, because there's been a lot of concerns addressed that aren't completely, let's say, we can't dispel completely or address it, that I think that it's just smart to to be thoughtful about it and try to weigh all the different factors involved.